I'd like to talk today about the book of Exodus. Book of Exodus, key book in the Hebrew Scriptures, and it describes the key event in the history of the Jewish people, the Exodus, which we think probably took place in the 13th century, conquest of Palestine probably around 1250, and the Exodus itself around 1280. What was happening was that the descendants of the Israelites were becoming very fruitful. They were becoming very prolific, many descendants. And basically, that was a fulfillment of the promise that was given to Abraham, to Isaac, and Jacob, that they would have many descendants. So that promise is being fulfilled, however, in Egypt. And so the land became filled with them. And really, they might have spread even beyond Goshen, where they were originally, into other parts of Egypt. That would be probably the sense when you look at the sense that there were just so many who were, uh, you know, all over the place, these descendants. And so probably in Goshen originally, and then spreading to other parts of Egypt, but still mainly, it seems, concentrated in Goshen. What happened, of course, is that Joseph made such a great impact, helped the people so much, but of course, new regimes come in, new leaders, new rulers, and quickly they forget that, well, Joseph saved us. They forget that story, and so they're looking at the present situation and they're becoming alarmed. They're seeing all of these descendants of Joseph, all of the Israelites. They were called the Hebrews. Uh, they're seeing all of them and they're saying, oh, maybe they'll become too many and maybe they'll overwhelm our people and maybe they'll take over. And they get nervous when they see all of these descendants and the growth of the people. Uh, so in order to curb the growth, they had to come up with a plan. What are we going to do now to curb the growth of the Israelites? And so the plan they come up with is that, well, maybe they could help us build the cities, the great cities that we want to build. Maybe we can put them to work. They can be the ones who will be the laborers. Because if we get them involved in these projects, maybe they will not be as numerous. So that was the thought there. And if they build these cities, and particularly the supply cities of Python and Ramses, these big cities, they can build them up. They can be the laborers. But even with all of that forced labor that they had to undergo, they still increased. So they didn't stop multiplying, and they still increased. So my goodness, what are we going to do now? Uh, and the statement is made that they were reduced to cruel slavery. They became slaves. But even with that slavery, it did not stop them. So what are they going to do? Well, the Hebrew midwives, Shifra, which translated as beauty, and Pua, which translated as girl, they were told, well, why don't we just, have you kill the Hebrew males at birth, but you can let the females live, because the thought would be, well, eventually, if we kill all the males, we'll stop the people from multiplying, and it will be a good way to control the population, sort of a birth control measure. But those midwives, Shipra and Pua, they decide, well, we're not going to obey this. We're not going to do it. They let the children live. And it's interesting here that the female leadership is shown. We've had now in the story from Genesis, we've had a lot of male leadership and the occasional female. But here we see females really taking a leadership role, which is very interesting, right? Now, naturally, of course, when they see that the Hebrews are still increasing, there's going to be some questions. So they were questioned, and they said, Well, the Hebrew women, they give birth so quickly. We don't even get there when the children were born. They don't take their time like the Egyptian women. They're just a lot quicker. So that was the excuse that they came up with. Um, but it says in the scriptures that because the midwives respected God, their families thrived. So again, seeing the intervention of God, seeing the power of God, the might of God in the lives of these women. They listened to God. They respected the law of God. They respected what God wanted here. And God wanted life. He wanted the people to thrive, and they respected that, and they couldn't destroy life. And because they couldn't, their families thrived. They were blessed by their reaction and by their love that they displayed. Well, what next? What's going to happen? Well, the Pharaoh said to the subjects, well, what we're going to do now is all the Hebrew boys, we're going to just throw them in the river. When they're born, boom, get them in the river. And basically it would be the River Nile, but the girls, you can allow the girls to live. But Pharaoh, of course, needs the help of his subjects to achieve his end. God's will in this situation is achieved without any divine action or intervention. God's will is achieved as the midwives here reflect on what should be done. The Pharaoh needs his subjects. God's will has a power about it. God's call is awesome. God's way is the right way. And the midwives respond to that. Now, the power of the Israelites, however, is superior to the power of Pharaoh, in that the humble midwives outsmart the mighty Pharaoh. So here's the mighty Pharaoh who is ruling over all of Egypt, but these humble midwives are able to outsmart the Pharaoh. It shows you the power of faith, the power of the Israelites. They receive no communication from God, the midwives, but they know the difference between right and wrong, and they know what should be done, and they follow what should be done. Again, it shows the power of truth, the power of right over wrong. They differ from the male models in Genesis. These women show a different aspect, right? They show that the importance of following God and not the petty jealousies that we have sometimes seen in the men up to this point. So these women become really role models of following God. So what do we learn? We learn the fruitfulness of the people, but also the forgetfulness of history. Many times in history, good things that have happened, they just are forgotten and lessons are not learned. We also learn the fear of minorities and how these minorities might take over, a lesson that we see repeated over and over again in our own history. Oh, these minorities, they might take over and people get nervous, they get upset, they worry. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen if the minorities become too powerful? We must curb their growth. We have to put restrictions on them. We have to suppress them in some way. The fear of immigrants, right? These new people that have come into our land, what are they going to do? Are they going to bring their customs and they're going to try to change our customs? Is it going to be difficult for us? All of this fear that gets played out. We also see the increase in face of obstacles. Many serious obstacles are put in the way, but the people still increase. It's amazing. And then we see the great example of the midwives. We see their faith, we see their dedication to right, and we see how they are blessed. And we also see the limitations of the mighty Pharaoh, the Pharaoh's power. So the chapter 1 is bringing out, well, there are limitations even though he is so powerful. And sometimes we speak of powerful people and all they can do, but even they face limitations. And then the other amazing theme here is the role of the women, what these midwives are able to accomplish. is amazing. And of course, what they are doing, these midwives, they are following the example of Father Abraham, who is the first in the Bible to say yes to following God. And as we know, Father Abraham had many friends. Many friends had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so were you. So let's all praise the Lord. Keep on praising the Lord, and God bless.